Hello, good evening, and welcome to Axiom Flux, Season 5, Episode 3. And tonight's episode is called Society Kills. We got some great guests. We've got some great guests on the show tonight. We've got PJ. Good evening, PJ.
Good evening. How are we all doing? We all right?
Yes, we're all doing well on tonight, the 25th of November, 2018. We've got PJ and we've got Stav. Good evening, Stav.
Good evening, comrade.
Good evening, comrade. And we've got Jouster. Good evening, Jouster.
Hello.
How are you doing, my friend?
Excellent.
Good. Pleased to hear it. And we've also got Billy Boy. Hello, Billy.
How's about that then, guys and gals?
Oh, that was a great impersonation of the famous Jimmy Savile, I believe, if I'm not mistaken.
The Barbara of Seville.
Barbara of Seville. Well, tonight's topic is Society Kills. I haven't planned this, and I don't know quite what we're going to be talking about in the way that society kills. So I'm going to leave it open to the floor for anybody that wants to come in and
I'll start, Jeff, because I'm not going to be speaking much. I'll be more on tech tonight. I'll start by just concluding on from last week's show. It's the 25th. It's the day where May's gone with the withdrawal agreement. I'm yet to do a bit of research on that to see how that unfolded. So I thought I'd just quickly mention that as a side note. And I think Bill cracked the nail on the head when he did his impersonation of Jimmy Savile. That is a good example of how society kills. And even when it's killed you, you're still not safe.
We're even not safe after death, are you trying to say?
Well, not when Jimmy Savile's about now. Thankfully he's not, but anyway, even, you know.
Well, hopefully after death. I was going to say, hopefully after death, we'll all go to heaven and he'll be down there in the pits of eternal hell. So hopefully he won't be a bother to us then.
I think, necrophilia, I think you were referring to. PJ.
Our stuff, yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, we were going to have a different show tonight, but it didn't pan out. So we've chosen to plumb with Society Kills. Now, is it just society kills? Could you say nature kills? Could you say the universe kills? I don't know. We live in a pretty chaotic universe. Would you not agree with that assertion?
Is that an open question?
Yes, to anybody?
Well, yes, of course. But then, do you have much option? Because you're born into this society, allegedly, and you're taken out of this society, allegedly. So there isn't anything else, is there, apart from society? Even if you're a third world country that's not actually participating directly in this society, but being completely screwed by this society, you're still affected by it all totally. So, you know, it's more likely you're going to be killed by society in a third world country, even though you're not strictly a member of the society, which is doing what it does. So, yes, of course, there isn't anything else, is there? People
I think
can't live in it, Jeff. They can't live in it, but at the same time, they seem to not be able to live without it. Strange, eh?
Are we confusing society with socialism, though, there, Stav? I don't know. Can you define society as a whole? Let's have an idea of the definition of society. What is the true definition of society? Is it a collection of people sort of gathered together to create a common goal or a common purpose? That dreaded word, common purpose.
If you're looking at it on the creation of a kicking on from societies and civilization, societies of yesteryear. Well, one of the biggest societies that had an astounding effect for the last 2,000 years is the Roman civil society, of which a lot of people say is entangled within the rules of many Western societies today, i.e. their legislation. So if we take civil society from the Roman times onwards, then perhaps that's the best explanation of what people seem to feel that society is, Jeff, I guess.
I guess that's one way of looking at it. And of course, civil, I suppose, would be a sort of an abbreviation of civilized. So we're living in a civilized society, allegedly. Allegedly. I add the word allegedly specifically because I think there's a lot of people that would feel nowadays that we're not actually that civilized, or maybe we're suddenly heading in the wrong direction. I think we've reached a point where we could be considered a civilized and caring society, and now we seem to be taking a bit of a wrong turn in some ways. I don't know if anybody else feels that way.
Yeah, I do. It's the reverse of what we were put on this earth for. Everybody seems to be wanting to do the reverse. Or make it happen. The institutions and cultures of a distinct self-perpetual group is the definition of society, a group of humans broadly distinguished from other groups by mutual interest, participation in active characteristic relationships, shared institutions, and a common culture. Well, that's pretty much every family unit there is, but seems to be a what would you call it? The collegiate effect is anti-society, aren't they? Would that be right?
You're referring to the Coudenhove-Kalergi agenda?
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Right. And there's another definition, actually, I read once of society, which sort of goes against the sort of common accepted definition of society, which is the one we just mentioned. But the other version of society I heard was the dominant members of a community or something like that. I'm paraphrasing here. I can't remember it exactly. Something like the dominant members of a community. That's right. So are we really part of this society, or is society just the ruling class and we're not members, we're not part of that club? Maybe, I don't know. There's a different aspect to it. I don't know if anybody else has heard that definition of society.
Well, yes, there's several definitions, isn't there? You can pick and choose whichever fits. You could actually say we're no better than a troop. Is it a troop of monkeys? Chimpanzees, baboons. They have hierarchies, don't they? So everything in this world has a hierarchy, even nature, in that respect. So human beings, I guess, are not any much different, really.
Well, we're a society, aren't we? Tonight we've clubbed together with a general consensus.
Well, no, not directly, Bill, because a society has to have a base of rules and legislation, i.e. it's got to have a constitution, which is kind of weird. You know, one of the oldest so-called democracies that harps on about is the, mother of democracy, when people say Greece was the mother of democracy. You know, a government, a ruling body, a hierarchical system, democratically, allegedly elected to office, right? And they have no constitution. They have no rule. They have no basis of a rule of law anymore. They say this, the MPs themselves say, there is no constitution. It's an uncodified piece of paper of charters and grants and this sort of thing. So, this is rather stupid. When you think about it, even if you wanted to set up a coffee morning club where you were going to entertain each other and you was going to price the cups of coffee for 10 pence a cup, you would have to have a committee, you'd have to have a treasurer, therefore you'd have to have a constitution. And yet a coffee club has to have a constitution, yet the government that runs this country does not. I find that most absurd, don't you?
I actually, it adds a lot of questions for me because I've heard a lot of different things. I hear one thing saying we're a democracy and that we've got no constitution, and yet I've heard other people saying that we're a constitutional monarchy and we haven't got a democracy. So the democracy bit is an illusion. So you hear all these different things, and I don't personally. I'm confused as hell because I don't know which is right and which is wrong. I think Jouster believes that we've got a ruling monarchy that is the head of the snake. I think I don't know if you would agree with that assertion, Jouster. Is that how you feel about it? That the head of the snake is the monarch, and that everything else is just subservient to that.
Could say that, yeah.
Okie dokie. Well, I mean, some people would say, no, rubbish. We're a democracy. We're a democracy. We have a vote. We have the ability to turf out politicians we don't like and this and that. So, what's your thoughts on it, Joseph?
Well, if you look at what actual powers has the Queen got, even if they're not used, she's still got them, hasn't she?
I have heard such a thing. On many occasions. Like, for example, she still retains the power to dissolve government if she wishes. I don't know if that's true or not. This is what I've heard. Can you shed any light on that for us? Or?
She's no longer the king, the head of the Church of England anymore.
No longer the head of the Church of England, isn't she?
When did that happen? When did that happen, Bill?
About 2 years ago.
No, I thought she was defender of the. I thought she was defender of the faith.
Well, yeah,
I thought that was an
she's giving it up.
Oh, I thought that was an obligation to the sovereign to protect.
I think she handed it back to the Pope.
But if we haven't got a democracy anymore, we're losing our sovereignty. So we're just like, we don't need a queen, we don't need a parliament. We just let us out and let's roam around like we used to do. Form our own little groups again, yeah?
I noticed one thing, Bill. You almost called our head of state, our so-called alleged head of state, you almost called her a king. Is this to do with the binary, non-binary thing? Because maybe it's now sexist to refer to her as a queen, and maybe she'd prefer to be called a king. I don't know.
Well, I would have thought the LGBT would be a bit put back by getting rid of the word queen. I mean, a lot of the gay community like that name.
I mean, I've got the title is Supreme Governor of the Church of England, and she is still in that role.
There was something that happened in Ireland. A couple of years ago.
Yeah.
I think Bill may be referring.
McGuinness.
Yeah.
McGuinness.
Yeah, where she went into the Catholic Church.
Yep.
And she's not allowed to go into a Catholic church.
No, but she did. And
she still is. She still is to this moment.
Yeah, on paper, Jasper, but she broke her oath by going into a Catholic church.
Yeah, right across the road.
Was she invited?
No,
she went. It doesn't matter whether she was invited.
She broke her
constitutional oath by going into a Catholic church.
No.
That's what she's not meant to do. If she was a true head monarch, if it was a constitutional monarchy with a parliament, it ain't now.
I think the year was, Andy, was 2013. Sorry, 2013. It was the same year that she came to 10 Downing Street. You probably might remember her having tea with Gordon Brown, and she popped into the Bank of England to see how the bullion was looking and went, "Oh, where's he gone?" And of course,
yeah, that's it. Yeah.
and also there was word that she was actually formally going to announce that summer abdicating in July. Now I think that's all been shelved, but she's already been done. Charlie's been lined up, and the rest of it is so. As Joseph said, you know, paper on, bit of paper. It's a barefaced lie. I go along with things that I see with my eyes, like they've done with the EU. I mean, they signed that off the other day when she first went over there. Yeah, so it's all monkey business.
Yeah.
And these things have to be put in place years in advance that the man in the street gets to know, and you're always lagging, so you're never able to do anything or catch up or what, you know.
Yes, it's the normal way they work. So you're quite right. It's the way they carry on to go on. So, but apparently we don't have a constitution. So she doesn't have a constitutional coronation oath to do anything. So therefore she can't be a monarch. She can't be a constitutional monarch. So therefore she's just a nobody. So it doesn't matter that she went in the Catholic Church. I don't give a monkeys if she wanted to go in a synagogue or a mosque or whatever. It's her business. But it's quite clear that there is no monarch. There's no constitutional monarch. You don't have a constitution. You don't have a monarch. You don't actually have a parliament when you really slice it all up.
So
and as for the House of Lords, well, don't start me on the House of Lords.
So could we determine then that the so-called alleged head of state is nothing really more than a mascot, and that she's just there to give us the illusion of her control over us, or is it something a bit more?
Yeah, well, I think Mark Stevens, the American guy, No State Project. I listened to quite a bit of his stuff. I don't agree with everything, but what he does say, he says there is no government. They're just a group of greedy people. There's no party politic. There's no body politic. There's nothing there. They're just corporate greedy individuals serving themselves.
And now it's funny you said that, Stav, because if you have a look in the House of Commons at any time in the week, you'll see that generally there's half a dozen people there, or something like that, and some of them have fallen asleep on the benches, and next to nothing is going on at all. And apart from Wednesday afternoon. Now, Wednesday afternoon, they have Prime Minister's Question Times, which is all probably a bit of a show, or, you know, a show by the shit show, whatever you want to call it. Pardon the expression. So it could all just be a load of stage theatre, compartmentalised so that the MPs think they're actually doing something useful, when in fact they're just there to continue the charade that we have a government.
Yeah, absolutely.
Could that be a fair assertion?
Yeah. Well, it's not. Well, Joustin knows about the Lord Protector. He knows about his son. He knows about what went on. We know what happened. We know how these people operate, because they have no reverse liability. These are greedy people that can never break any law, because they're above a law, whatever the law they make. So they're just people. That's all they are, same as anybody else. And they come from certain families, certain privileges. They're put in place to do these things because they're greedy people and they want to stay at the top of the ladder. That's all it is. That's all it's ever been.
Maintain the status quo.
Yes, and it's done through family bloodlines and all that stuff. Yes. That's what they are. Isn't it? They're not. You know, it makes me mad when people say, well, you know, they're giving the country away. This Brexit, how dare they? Treason. They don't give a shit. What's treason mean? What does it mean to them?
Well, you know, if it's true,
Traitor.
if it's true that they're above the law, and we've all been led to believe that we have equality before the law, we're all equal. If we're all equal, that means I'm as good as the Queen, and I'm as good as
Oh yeah, well I agree with that. Yeah, I agree with that.
good as Theresa May, and I'm as good as
I could put a frock on and do her job.
Well, Jeff, are you not a man?
I am. What last time I checked,
What makes you different to any of these elite, powerful people from, I don't know, George Soros, Donald Trump, David Cameron, George Osborne, all these people, even Corbyn, you know, keep the red flag flying here, comrade. What makes you any different? What makes them any different from you? Are they just not men?
indeed, as far as I can tell, I would say
Oh,
that.
I'm sounding a little bit biblical here, but I don't mean to be. But it's the same with women.
Except for one thing, they, of course, have immunity, or it appears to be that they have immunity above the law. They have some sort of diplomatic immunity. Now, was it John Harris that said, and I'm paraphrasing here, that if you look on Company's House, is it, or Dun and Bradstreet, or something like that, the Labour Party is actually in there as Alistair Darling MP or something like that, and he they use that as their trading name. They use Alistair Darling MP as their trading name because it gives them diplomatic immunity. Now, does that mean they got immunity above the law?
Well, don't forget, how do you hold a faceless, non-living thing that only exists in a fiction 2D paper world culpable for their liabilities? You can't. It's like asking a corporation. Now, Mr. Corporation, yes, I'm Mr. Corporation. What? The man? No, the piece of paper talking to you. Now, if you don't do well, I'm going to put you in. What? This is nonsense.
It's a bit like setting up a trust then.
Yes.
A trust, you set it up as a corporation so that they can't be brought into court, because who are you going to take? The corporation of the City of London to court or something like that? Because
Well, it's been like it for hundreds of years. You can go back to the Elizabethan days, and all the people who had the power were the pirates, the privateers, from Walter Raleigh to Francis Drake to Mr. Morgan, Blackbeard. These people were thieves and robbers of the sea, but they were called this privateer name, privateer. And of course, they worked all together with the Queen Elizabeth to make them the most powerful country within the world at that time, Europe. And they were just a load of individual opportunists that stole, killed, robbed, and took from other people.
can you not, hang on a sec, here's a good question for you, Stan, okay?
Yeah.
Can you not take a corporation to court? Because in a way, a corporation is a person, is it not? The same as we use on the game of Monopoly called Society, we use a token. Like on the game of Monopoly, we move a piece around the board, yeah, like a little top hat or a little dog or whatever, and we call that our person, our straw man. Now, if we're moving this piece around the board, as a living being, we don't exist in that commercial world, that commercial entity. But as a person or a corporation, we are playing a part within that commercial construct. So, but they do seem to have some sort of immunity above reproach from the law.
Well, they write it, don't they?
Yeah.
They have legislative friends, legislators who make up silly rules, ideas to tax people, bring them about. I've got a great idea, Smith. Let's bring out a bogey tax. Whatever they want to bring out as law, they can bring out. It's only opinion. It's only opinion. That's all it is.
I'll tell you what, Stav, I don't know about bogey taxes, but they did in the past, many, many years ago, they used to have a thing called a beard tax. This is absolutely true. Believe it or not, if you grew a beard, they tax you on your beard. Now, I don't know if they give you a bigger tax if you had a bigger beard or anything like that, but they have had in the past, in British history, we've had some very, very strange taxes. For example, we had a thing called the window tax. Now, with the window tax, if you were letting in a certain amount of daylight, the more daylight that you had coming into your property, the more you'd be taxed, or something like that. So what happened then was a lot of people thought, how can we get around this window tax? I know, we'll brick up the window. We'll pull out the window frame and we'll brick it up. And in fact, they used to do that. They used to brick up the windows so that they didn't have any daylight coming in, just to avoid the tax. This is absolutely true. Strange as it may seem.
No, I know of it, and I know Georgian properties that you can go today in certain parts of the countries, and all the windows are bricked up on them.
Yeah, that's right. That's absolutely right. Crazy.
Yeah, that's right. But I mean, it doesn't matter, does it? At the end of the day, if we go back in history, because hey, listen, what else have we got? Can you go into the future? Can't somebody tell me the future? You know, don't. No assumptions. You've got to tell me exactly what the future's going to do and promise me that, you know, this is what it's going to be. But promises are promises. But
it's Monday tomorrow.
Well, it's Monday tomorrow, allegedly. It could be Monday for you. It could be Friday for me. It depends what I want it to be. But
you could sleep for the whole week, Stav.
Yes, you could.
Wake up on the
but if people want some type of hierarchical system, right, that's not going to kill you like these societies do, you've got to have reciprocity. You've got to have reciprocal, equal sides to this, just like the Anglo-Saxons did with their warrior code, with their king. Yeah, if it didn't work both ways, he was out, and I mean more than out, taken out. Yeah, so if you're going to have any hierarchical system, it's got to be reciprocal. It's got to be reciprocal. Otherwise, you know, people think it is. This is the crazy thing, which it clearly isn't. So if people want a hierarchical system, a government, a constitution, a rule of law, then it's got to be 50-50. It's got to be reciprocal. Or none at all. It's entirely up to people. But that's what I think anyway. But, I mean, that's just what I think. It's just my thoughts.
I mean, they like to use the term level playing field between the EU and the UK since Brexit has gone on. They say those things a lot. Like, for example, EU citizens still having rights over here after the Brexit deal completed, and vice versa, which is basically that the British people, expats living in Europe, will also have equal rights after the deal is concluded. So they call that a level playing field, which is a reciprocal arrangement. So but there doesn't seem to be the reciprocal arrangements between the people and the ruling class, as they like to, as some people would refer to them. So I think things have got a bit out of balance and a bit out of whack somewhere, because I think if you're going to have a system of law, any system of law, that everybody has to be equally accountable. I think that's fiercely important. And I think the laws should be based on sensible morals rather than just conjuring up these silly laws out of thin air, like, you know, thought crime. Oh, you mustn't think this. Oh, you thought that, did you? Oh, that's very naughty. I'm going to have to slap the cuffs on and take you away. What sort of society are we heading into where they can, you know, nick you for pre-crime? You know, committing a crime before you've committed a crime before you've even committed the crime, which is a sort of mad state of affairs, isn't it? It's like
well, that makes it makes sense of why you've got all this Big Brother. You know, it is an Orwellian super state. The reason why they got the Big Brother is then they can monitor everything you say, everything you do, everything you think you're going to do, and hit you accordingly, or make sure that the world that you're living in stops you from doing that. You know, that is the complete totalitarian wet dream for these monsters. And they are monsters. They're lunatics. But all they're going to do is they're going to this country. I can see this might sound a bit far-fetched. I don't want it to happen, but I think it will. It will balkanize this country. This country will split in half, literally.
Mm.
And one lot will be on one side and one lot will be on the. And I could think that'd be geographically too. I can see that happening, can't you?
I think it's entirely possible. But if you look at the sort of progression of how things have gone over the years, I mean, in the past we had common law, and basically they were based on moral values. So if you killed somebody, you could be done for murder with intent, or if you killed somebody by accident, you could be done for manslaughter without intent, and so on and so forth. But now, then they upped the ante a bit, and they thought, well, let's have a look at the law. Now, the law's not working because there's still lots of car accidents going on, manslaughter, whatever you want to call it. Maybe we need to prevent these problems rather than just dealing with them after the event. So then they brought in speed limits and so on and so forth. So you had the prevention of crime, which became a crime, allegedly, and or statute or act or whatever. And then, of course, they've gone from the actual crime to prevention of crime. Now they're going to pre-crime. If they think that you're a threat to society, they'll try and eliminate you before you even become a threat to society. And then, of course, they'll go down the line of thought crime. Well, and then you've got all the hate speech laws and all this sort of stuff preventing you from opening your trap and saying what's on your mind. And I've read something earlier on about the United Nations trying to legalize migration, for example. And they said about something about actually talking about migration in a bad way. If you talk about migration in a bad way, they can criminalize that.
Yeah,
So-
that'll make it. Yeah, you've committed a crime and you'll be arrested for it if you mention migration.
Yeah, if you criticize migration, despite the damage, the actual damage that migration can do to a country's culture, it can damage its infrastructure, it can damage its economic abilities and things like that. And yet, you're not even going to be allowed to talk about that. How draconian is that? Wow.
Well, yeah, of course. And you know what? There'll be a certain amount of people that will take that. Let's take it because they just bend over no matter what because they're scared of their own shadow. They're scared of their own shadow for some reason. I don't know what they're scared of because the inevitable card always lays for each and every one of us. So you can't escape that. What you do in that time, of course, is the all-important thing. But they don't seem to think that. They think world is jollifications and consuming and just being given numbers to do that with. You are dealing with children in this country. They are children. They are children.
Yeah. Well,
Even many of the politicians are children. I was told that by a now late politician in the field. He told me that before he died. He said, you wouldn't believe the people that go to Westminster. You wouldn't believe what they don't know and what they think being in government or having a parliamentary seat means.
It's incredible, isn't it? It's absolutely amazing stuff.
So it's the same with the legal system. It's exactly the same.
Well, I think the thing is,
Nonsense. Whole lots of nonsense.
I think one of the most important things we've got as a people is freedom of speech, the ability to be able to, improve our own cognitive understanding of different things by merely communicating with each other, and being able to debate different topics and things like that. I think it's so critically important to any civilized society, because when you stop talking, you stop challenging people's cognitive processes. Now, if you do that, it's a very good way. If you can stop people talking, it would be a very good way of dumbing down the population And what we've got to try and do, I think, is to get people talking more and more about these things, and ignore what they're saying. If
The
they
consensus, Jeff, the consensus will always be 50-50. So 50% of the country, you're not going to convince anything. You're not going to convince them anything.
in
You're
what
not going to change their minds. They're not going to listen to you. You're talking out the top of your head. We're not interested. What are you talking about? Are you trying? My family relies on the EU and can't Mr. Junker. He works in his office. He's a nice man.
but at least you can talk about it. I mean, it might not
But
be.
you're not gonna, it's a waste of time talking to the. There are two sides in this, whether people want to admit it or not. I'm not going to use the excuse of propaganda brainwashing by the BBC, and we've all been raised. We need wake up. I'm not going to go down that path anymore. I'm pretty much finished.
I mean, I've heard people, staff, for example, since the referendum, people that were formerly Remainers, and they've since then they've said, well, I did vote to remain, but I think I made a mistake. They say, and I say, why do you think you made a mistake then? And they've said, well, I've since seen how the EU likes to bully the member states this way and that way, and how that stuff about the military, the unification of the militaries to form this EU PESCO military dictatorship, how they're trying to form this military dictatorship, and it's made me change my mind. I've decided that if it ever came down to a second referendum, they said that I would have to then put in a vote of leave, because I've seen them for their true colours and stuff like this. So I think there is the ability to change people's minds. I think it goes two ways, because obviously you've got the project fear on the one hand, and that will turn leavers back into remainers, and you'll have people that were formerly remainers that actually wake up and see the light and see the truth. And so I think it's important to still be able to discuss things with people.
Of course, it's important. It's important, Jeff. But
Very important.
Take a leave. Take a couple of months out. Go and spend time with these other people, especially the younger generation, because a lot of this is the younger generation. They're not interested in governments. They're not interested in queens. They're not interested in constitution. They're not interested about culture. They're not interested about any of those things. They're not interested in sovereignty. They have no interest whatsoever in all of this old culture, which makes up a country called England, and every other country in Europe, by the way. It's not just here. Right. So those people, go and spend some time with them in their forums. Make out you're one of those, or just say, I'm prepared to be convinced otherwise, and see how much the consensus is that's absolutely anti what you've just said.
Well, Stav, I think you're probably, pretty much right in what you say, but I feel that a lot of the cause of that is due to our education system. Some people would call it, I would call it an indoctrination system. And I think from the schools, they've pushed a very heavily pro-EU narrative, and that we've got this great society and that it's working wonderfully, and it's so caring and liberal, and it looks after people's freedom to be able to travel all over the world and all this sort of stuff. And I think they've had this belted into them psychologically, not with the belt, but I mean psychologically. Yeah.
There's no doubt about that, Jeff. But they don't care. But they don't care. Just give me my little thing in my hand called an iPhone or a smartphone. I call them not so smart, but there you are. I have my reasons for that. But just give me that. That's all I want. Because I interact with this world every way through that unit. Now, if you wanted to change that, if you wanted to upset all of these people, you take their unit off of them. And actual fact, I can include some people in this very room who use them things. Now, you take it away from them.
Well,
Take that away from them and see what would happen.
Well, I can eliminate me from that group because I haven't actually got an iPhone or a smartphone. I've got an old-fashioned dumb mobile.
You see where I'm coming from, though.
Yeah, I see your point. You're absolutely right. I think whenever I've gone out into the public and I've looked around, I don't really see people talking to each other like they used to in the old days. You see people staring into their phones mindlessly, scrolling down their social media pages and this and that on their phones. And I think there's definitely been a sort of disconnect in society from people's ability to communicate in a sort of adult way. And when they do communicate, quite often they end up fighting and rather than listening to each other's points of view, it's like an ego thing. So you've got to get past those two things. One, you've got to get them talking, and then you've got to get them talking in a way that is respectful for each other, so that they can listen to each other rather than shouting over the top of each other's voices and things. I've been accused of doing that, by the way, shouting over the top of people. I try not to. I try my best not to. And I think, it's a learned thing that you do with practice.
Well, respect, it doesn't exist anymore. That word, you might as well rip it out of the dictionary and throw it in the bin. It doesn't cut any ice anymore. Respect. You talk about, I walked down the street the other day. I walk my dogs. I mind my own business. I get on with my life because I don't really have conversations much with these people because it's impossible. Coming down the pavement the other night is a guy with a mobile phone. He's not only got a hoodie on his head, he's got a mask underneath and all.
He's got a mask, but one of those Vendetta, V for Vendetta.
He's got the thing up over it, the scarf up over it, or you can't even see. He's got enough room to see his iPhone. That's all.
Good
you
God.
Tell me what's that about? You tell me what is that about?
I don't know. Maybe he wants to remain anonymous or think he's a part of this anonymous. If it's one of those V for Vendetta masks, I know they use them.
No. These guys walk them down in the day like this down here. And I'm on the sleepy south coast. I'm not in Birmingham or London.
Right.
I'm on the sleepy south coast down here. I've seen this local seaside town turn into something that I don't even recognise. I don't recognise it. I don't recognise the people. I don't even understand their language.
Well, I'm lucky enough to live on the outskirts of Bristol, and where I live, things haven't changed an awful lot. I think I've been quite
Well,
good.
Jeff, you'll go into Bristol. That's all I can say. Go into North Bristol and have a good look round.
Well, I'll tell you what I've noticed is the worst areas in the big cities like Bristol, where I live, tend to be in the central parts of the city. Luckily, I live on the outskirts, so it hasn't changed an awful lot around here. We've still got some sort of, it's reasonably nice area. And but yes, I think the centres of the big cities tend to be the first to go into decline, and then it sort of spreads outwards like a virus.
And look at you say you got a nice area. If I don't have a car, and I actually don't understand why people have cars anymore. How on earth do you drive around this country without being gridlocked in traffic that takes you 10 hours to go 10 miles? And then when you've got a free road, you smash your suspension to pieces, or you get punctures, or crack your anti-roll bar because the roads are falling to pieces. I walk on pavements that are disintegrating. Oh, it's very nice around my part of the woods, yes.
I have actually smashed one of my shock absorbers on one of those speed ramps. I wasn't actually going that fast on it, but it was a new speed ramp that they put up. And of course, I didn't expect it to be there. As I was turning this corner, I didn't expect it to be there. And by the time I was there, I was on top of it, and I came down off it with a big bang, and I heard a big sort of funny noise. And it turns out that I'd broken the shock absorber. This was on a previous car that I had. And And basically, the council didn't want to know. When I went to them and I said, look, this thing was put there. There was no warning signs that there was going to be this speed ramp. And it sort of damaged my car. And they said, well, we're not interested. You should have been driving more slowly or something like that. But yeah, I know what you mean. And also, like you say, the potholes, absolutely terrible.
Disgusting, disgraceful. Jeff, they have a contractor.
Uh-huh.
They used to come and cut the grass around the area, right, about every 2 weeks during the summer. Now they do it 2 times a year. And actual fact, the last time they came, I was going to go over to them, mate. Oi, where you going? You ain't finished. You haven't finished cutting. And he said, well, where's that, mate? I said, the car park. The car park with the grass growing through the tarmac.
Good God.
Yeah. You see, the thing is, we've all been frogs in the proverbial boiling water being turned up. And we've got used to the country the way it's become.
Yeah,
we've got used to not having less and less say, less and less rights, if you want to call them that, and less money, less and less work, less and less family.
Well,
and
I don't.
People are used to this, and they go, "Well, I'm doing all right. You're doing all right."
Well, I think there definitely has been a gradual drip process, hasn't it, where they've been putting up prices. The local councils have been putting up these extortionate council tax rates and things like that, and giving us less services in return. It's a bit like when you go shopping for food. You now pay more, and you find that a lot of the actual products have shrunk in size. So you get the shrinkflation, where you get the shrinking services and the shrinking products, and you get the bigger costs attached to it. So they get you both ways. And I'll tell you what, actually, what you were saying there, another thing I've noticed lately is the street lamps. The street lamps have been switched off, and I think it's been going on for a while, actually. For some parts of the year, they leave the street lamps on at night time, and yet other parts of the year, they switch them off. And I'm thinking, I've come home late at night and I've gone to put my key in my door, and I can't find the bloody keyhole. And I'm thinking, bloody hell, I wish they'd stick that street light on so I can actually see what I'm supposed to be unlocking on my front door, and things like that. And I've noticed the service levels are going down. They're emptying the bins less frequently. In some places in the UK now, less than I think every 4 weeks now, for emptying the bins. Now, where I am is every 2 weeks. It was originally once a week they used to do it. Then they made it once every 2 weeks, and in some parts of the country is now down to once every 4 weeks. So they're switching the street lights off. They're letting the potholes deteriorate and get worse instead of filling them in, and all this sort of stuff. The level of policing, is absolutely abysmal. That's why we've got such problems in big major cities like London and Birmingham at the moment, and it all seems to be going to rack and ruin on a very quick scale. It seems to be ramping up as well. It used to be the drip. Now they're ramping it all up. So I don't know if you've noticed that, but it seems to be accelerating.
Well, if we say society kills, and tonight's topic was about, well, perhaps it's a blessing in disguise in the end, because the way society's going, who would want to live in it anyway? And people seem to have this crazy idea that they can't live without it. But I mean, that's what I said in the beginning of the show. And, it kind of makes sense to me, really, in a way. But I just think, Jeff, that, this society thing, does it really exist? Is it just a platform for them, whoever they are, the people that are doing all right, to carry on doing all right at everybody else's expenses? The thing is, everybody doesn't want to admit it, of course, but because it's embarrassing. But it's the stark truth that people have in isms anyway. Let's put it into words that people recognise, which is, you've got socialist ideals with capitalistic values. Now, there you are. How do you change that? I don't think you can.
I look at socialism, Stav. I look at socialism as a form of cronyism. That's the way I would see it. Of course, if you mix that with capitalism, your socialist cronyism ways with capitalist values, you end up with a form of crony capitalism. So it's like a double-edged sword. It gets you both ways.
Oh yeah, well it does. I mean, you can ask anybody, right? Be honest. When you bought something, right, you want to buy it as cheap as you can get it. You don't want to pay over the top. You want to get it for the rock bottom price. But when you want to sell that goddamn thing, you want the most money for it.
Yep, that's pretty much what people do, I think. Yep.
So people are just as bad as other people in this whole game of society. You know, they're virtuoso, they're virtuous, but virtuous. They like to put out the old shine the old virtue badge. Everybody likes shining the old virtue badge. I'm a good man, but don't you skin me in the deal. I want it as cheap as I can get it, and I want to screw the other person when I sell it.
It's a bit like saying, oh, I love immigrants. I think they're good. I think they're brilliant for society. Let's let them all in and give them equal rights to the British people and equal rights and access to our welfare system and that. But don't put one in my house. I don't want them in my house because my name's Theresa May. They can come
It's not in my backyard.
Yeah, not in my backyard. It's like, all these people that go on about the travellers being bad and that. Oh, we don't want them round here. They're riffraff, they're trouble, blah, 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 blah. And yet they do no more harm for society than anybody else.
They don't want to be part of society. They're very wise.
I think I would agree with that assertion, Stav. I think they've found ways of living more cheaply and within their means. They're not so reliant on things like the rest of society are, like the banking system and all that, which is behind a lot of the problems. So I think they've got their heads a bit more screwed on than the rest of us in some ways.
Anyway, Jeff, this has sounded like the Stab and Jeff show, probably more on the Stab's Big Rant show. But anybody else want to pipe in with any? I do apologise for taking it over. Any Jouster or Bill, have you got anything to say about what we've been discussing?
I give my time to you, Stab. Just carry on. It's quite interesting.
Well, thank you, Jouster. But
I'm multitasking at the moment.
Oh, okay. You're used to my
you. I'm listening to you with one ear and watching Van Wergel try to beat. It's a semi-finals of the darts on 4, so I'm watching that and listening to you.
Well, at least you got your priorities right, Bill.
I've got a mutual interest in it as well, by the way.
Well, yeah, I don't mean to, PJ, if you're listening, I don't mean to, I know it's meant to be a kind of a platform for airing your views and that, and I've gone probably digressed a bit much. But
well, what about the killing ape bit? You said social killing or something. Was it the debate?
Well, society kills basically.
Society kill, yeah.
Yeah, you're born into it, and you're taken out of it. So what do you think? What do you think? Is it society that kills people?
Well, that's what's happening at the moment. I mean, hundreds of years ago, or in our lifetime, us baby boomers, life was quite good, I suppose. Seemed to be quite normal in what we were born into. But we was unaware of the past, previous it, how it was so much different from our parents' point of view and their parents' point of view. I mean, I've been checking back ancestry, and on our mother's side, via her mother, who was comes from the Isle of Wight.
Well, not too much history, please, Bill.
Oh, right. Okay. It's just that, their ancestry goes back to Mary and what's the name, King of Spain, when they ruled here, And some
Bloody
of our,
Mary, you're talking about Mary Tudor.
yeah, and some of her ancestors, our mother, only by marriage, obviously, were on was the Archbishop of York in 15 something or other, and he was a thieving so and so. Apparently, they all were during wars and that, and he pinched all the gold and silver out the church, and the Mary she got the up about it and banished him to one of these safe havens where these type of people go when they've done nothing naughty. So, and then put somebody else back in it. But he never got punishment. He lived his life in luxury thereafter. And there's dozens of places all over Europe in various countries.
You got to remember. Yeah, Bloody Mary Tudor served the Catholic Church.
Well, the point I'm trying to make is
that's why she married Philip of Spain as well.
Yeah, I know. To federate them, join countries together like they've always done.
Well, the Vatican vassal state. You know, that's what England is. It's a Vatican vassal state. That's what the flag means. That's who gave the cross on the flag to William the Conqueror was Alexander II, the Pope. He gave him the papal ring, right? So when he came over, he planted it into the earth. Yeah. He sat as an overseer. You called him a king. People called him a king. But he was just in charge of a vassal kingdom. And it was confirmed. It was confirmed by John anyway in the Magna Carta.
All right, thanks for the history lesson, Andy. Sorry, mate. I didn't want to drag you off down there. But the point I was trying to mean is that we're discussing the moment society kill, and all I can think of related to that, although as a whole it's happening, everything's connected to us, even the stars and whatever, as Jeff was on about an ice age coming, that'll kill off some fair share of people. That's just nature, or man's
that's beyond society, isn't it?
But society kill the biggest ones. You can ask your father and his father and his father. Most of them were just used as cannon fodder. That's the biggest society.
Yes, it's called democide.
People.
It's called democide, yes. Death by government.
Ruling parties at the top. And if you turn around, Dad said and his father said, blah, 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 and even the Picts fighting under English kings, send in the Picts. Don't use it was the cannon fodder of people. They just dissed them and just, killed them off. And they're not no different today.
Yes, Bill, absolutely. But you're everything people talk about with the history and all of society, they always talk after 1066. Everything is after 1066. All of the badness, all of these nasty kings, vassal states of the Vatican, it all came around after 1066. Nobody wants to actually bring that out and talk about it. Even the alternative media, they want to sidestep it. They don't want to talk about history, right, before 1066. None of them do. I don't know why. Because they say, it's Dark Ages, we don't know nothing about it. Well, how about your imagination and doing a bit of research? Sometimes you find things out if you really try. But they don't want to, nobody wants to touch it. Nobody wants to touch it. They always refer to the Plantagenet kings and onwards and chivalry, jouster and jousting and all this stuff. They don't want to talk about the real history. And the real history of where England got its name was Anglo-Saxons. England was stopped existing after 1066. There was no England anymore. It doesn't exist for 1,000 years. It's as simple as that.
I think you've made some very relevant points there, Falk. I would also like to say that, while we're on the topic of society kills, as Bill said, he's quite right that there's been a lot of deaths from, all the conscription and wars and, being dragged into these nefarious battles, battles for nefarious purposes and stuff like that over the years. But also, one of the biggest killers is austerity. And I think what we're seeing now is extreme austerity. They're saying austerity is stopped now after 10 years. I don't see it myself. In fact, what I can see is that we've got hundreds of thousands of people living on the streets. Now, we're living in a temperate zone, as you know, in the UK, and it gets pretty bloody cold in the winters here. I struggle living in my flat with the cold. You know, sometimes you have to toss up between whether to stick the heating on or to stick some food in your gob, for especially for old age pensioners and things like that. And so these poor old dears, having to decide whether to give a tin of meat for the cat, or whether to stick the heating on and things like that, or to have a mug of soup. Struggling to get by. We've got the worst pensions apparently in the UK, in the Western world. We've got the worst pensions. So people are being paid pittances for stuff that they were supposed to get back from all the years of hard work that they put in, and they're just not getting it. So they're not getting, these poor old dears aren't getting their proper health care. They're not getting the proper pension levels of pensions and things like that. We've got hundreds of thousands of people living in doorways in the freezing cold. And I don't think people realise, I've got any conception of the fact that if you live in those sort of circumstances, your longevity is literally shortened drastically because of the cold. The element is a killer. Now, you could blame that on nature, or you could blame that as part of the inadequate housing programs we've got in this country, or whatever. So it's partially both. And I think society has played a big part in that. And I think, if we were to have decent housing programs and go back to social housing, where people could have low-income housing for the poor, and at least they would have a roof over their head, and they wouldn't be exposed to the elements like they are. I think that's one of the biggest problems we've got in society today. A lot of these homeless people, because they're so cold and they've got virtually nothing to eat, having to scavenge through bloody what they call these wheelie bins and things like that outside supermarkets to try and get a bit of food, and to beg for it. They've made it illegal to beg for food. This is the crazy thing. Society does kill, because they come along and they say it's illegal to beg for food. It's illegal to actually sleep rough on the streets. Do you think they actually, do you think they actually choose? This is what I say to these people that make these laws. Do you think they actually choose to be sleeping rough on the streets? Do you think they choose to have to beg for food? I think in the vast majority of cases, I think there are people that have slipped through the so-called safety net system and have ended up through no choice of their own where they are. I think there probably are some people that choose to live like that as well, but I think they're very small in that amount of people. But I think that's a massive problem in today's society. It's sad to see. They've always looked down on the poor, the establishment. They've always, even when I was a young man, you used to see homeless people, and they'd be pushed along by the establishment. The police would come along and say, now, come on, you can't stay there. Move along, move along. That's what they do. They move them along. But now they're taking it a step further. And these corporations, like sticking spikes in doorways so that they can't actually sleep in a doorway, and sticking things on park benches so they can't lay out on a park bench to sleep, and things like this. It's madness, absolute mad. Treating people, human beings, they're still human beings, and treating them like that, to me, is just inhumane. I think it's wrong. All right, they're homeless. They're down on their luck. Don't kick a dog when it's down on his luck, please. That's
exactly what they want. That's exactly what they want, and that's what they will carry, because that's our society. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. I think in the 50s and 60s, maybe Joustin could give us an update on.
By the way, Stav, if I could just interject briefly, I think we got Marty with us. Good evening, Marty. Oh, he's gone.
He is he's only listening in.
Oh, he's only listening in.
Now,
Okay.
let me put this question out. Maybe Bill, Jouster, and even yourself, and Marty, if he wants to speak, or Peter, or anybody. Now, the reason why the government built a lot of social housing, especially council estates, was they needed people, workers, to have housing on the industrial estates, which every place had an industrial estate where manufacturing was the thing to do. So they had to build these council estates to house the people who worked in these industrial estates. Now, I think that was a big part of social housing that a lot of people don't bring up. There's a reason why they had social housing, and it wasn't because they were good people and they had to put up, affordable rent. No, because you worked in the industrial estates. So it was a financial thing, profitability. It was all to do with money. It always has been, always will be. So when people mention social housing, it's like this nice, good thing that the government's doing for the people because they're really good people and they give a shit, which it isn't, is it? We know that. So
That's an interesting point you make there, Stab. I didn't realise that, but so maybe what we need to do is to bring back more industrial estates, and then hopefully they'll say, well, we need now to build more social housing to get people into these jobs.
well, let's not call it social housing. Let's call it workhouse housing. That's what it is. That's what it was. So it's cuddly. It's nice, social housing. It's like going in a pub to be social. Oh yes, a little get on together. It's crap, isn't it? I've never agreed with that, but not that people shouldn't have a roof over their head given the opportunity. If they work hard enough, then everybody's got to have somewhere to stay. Let's just eat the rich and hang the trays. Yeah, sure, mate. It's not sure. Yeah, rest out later. Yeah, work could do. As a solution there. But that's what I recall. Now I'm prepared to be corrected on that. Maybe I'm wrong, but I always thought, and what I looked into, and at the time, that most of the people on the council estates that I lived on, they worked at the local industrial estate. If it wasn't this town, it was the next town over. You worked in an industrial estate. You was either manufacturing things, repairing things, whatever, and that's what people called social housing was for, but it really wasn't. They were workhouse housing for workers, basically, and they had miners' cottages and all this stuff for all the industries up along around the country. So, of course, and then we had the seaside resorts. The good old slave, after he'd worked his nuts off in these workhouses to pay his workhouse rent in his social housing, could bugger off down the seaside for a week once a year, and all the little bit of breakfasts along the seaside towns used to profit from that, and that was their economy and whatever. Because that's all gone now. All of that's all completely destroyed, finished. But you see, Jeff, it's not.
So it's not people. It's not so social as you think it is.
No, it's not. No, it's not.
Is the dollar bill attached to it, so to speak?
Yes, that's just like the unions and Labour, socialist parties has always been.
Right. That's interesting you brought that up. So maybe this is the thing. I think the underlying crutch of the matter is that, or one of the underlying crutches of the matter is that society is sort of collapsing under the weight of lack of production. This is one of the things that I feel has taken place ever since we've gone into the EU. And I don't know whether a lot of people would agree with this, but I think manufacturing GDP in 1974 was about 83%. And in 2016, I think they found that it was down to 12%. So we're not actually a producing nation like we were going back, at the start of the EU. And I think that's probably had the knock-on effect with housing. And then plus you've got the huge levels of open door migration, which of course has put a massive strain on housing, available housing. I think there are houses out there, but I think what you find is a lot of the wealthy people snatch up all these houses and just leave them idle and empty, which is such a crying shame to see. If they at least rented them out or something, that would probably, if they suddenly rented out all these empty houses, you'd probably find that would have a knock-on effect because of supply and demand. You'd find that rents might come down a little bit, and a few more people might be able to get back into social, or a low, cheaper accommodation, at the very least. But yeah, I think that's a big part of the problem, is the lack of production we've got in this country. So if we got, all these industrial estates and started getting production going in different things, if we didn't have all the bureaucratic red tape from Brussels, and we could actually do that freely and get back to free trade in the old-fashioned way, I think that would have a big positive effect on our communities. I don't know whether that's right or not, but you never know. It might help things along a bit.
Well, I think the whole nation of what this country, the whole culture of what this country was originally built on was tribes of warrior people, warriors, with a man at the top who had a reciprocal duty. It worked both ways, and you never really saw a poor warrior.
Right.
I say you never saw. I wasn't there. Stupid thing to say, but you know, if you go and read a bit of history and the stories, and even read Beowulf and stuff like that, you know, all right, there's stories, but there's the warrior code. What has become of the people of this nation, and that this is what we've become, and there are no warriors anymore in this nation. The people are just bend over backwards. Yes sir, no sir, beat backs for sir.
Lie down on their back and let the establishment tickle their tummy, so to speak.
Well, that's what's happened, and this is what's happened. I think is happening. I mean, look in the United States. I mean, a lot of people, and me and Justin talked about the Scotch Irish and these people that built the United States, a lot of the states anyway. Yeah. They were hard people, and they were warrior people in their own right. They came from here. Well, they came from Scotland and Ireland, originally Scotland, but this is what the Appalachian people were, and they weren't taking no shit from George Washington. Mm-hmm. So what's happened? And America's going the same way. And a lot of all the Western democracies throughout Europe is going. Remember this, though. Remember this, Jeff. Here's a thought. A lot of people don't know this.
Yeah.
Right? We were the last country to be conquered by the Holy Roman Empire.
Ah, right. We were the last one to be conquered. Right.
Yes.
Right.
All the other countries in the world, known as Europe at that time, had already fallen to the Holy Roman Empire. We were the last, 1066.
Yeah.
So, and that is afraid that was the end of the English warrior. Then the warriors turned into sycophants, and we have what we have today.
Right. So it's sort of been a downward trend ever since then, since the conquering of England.
Yes, but a lot of people don't.
1066, that's the Battle of Hastings, isn't it?
Yeah, well, they know about England. A lot of people say, well, I'm English and then I'm British and then I'm UK. I'm Union last. Or I'm English, I'm UK and I'm British. They know, people, there's a feeling inside them that says they're English. What is that? What is English?
From where I've examined history, Stav, I think the vast majority of England, what we now call England, was actually Welsh. So apart from a little slither of land.
Yeah, but I'm talking about the word. I'm talking about how.
I just want to go back.
Not Celtic, not Britain, not Albion. That
Okay,
was
I just
before.
wanted to go a little bit back into the past.
But it's got no connection with the country called England.
No. But when you call yourself English, effectively what you are is German, from what I can understand.
Well, you're Germanic, you're Celtic, you're Danish, you're Norwegian,
Yeah, a little bit of
you're
Viking there.
Briton or Bretonian or whatever you want to call it. You know, even some people from the Basque area.
Mhm.
Yeah, Basque. You know the Basque area between France and Spain? Yeah, there's a connection. Yeah.
South of France, north of Spain.
Yeah, that's right. So, I mean, my concern is when people keep on about England, call it Albion then, what the Romans used to call us before they come and occupied this island. Call it up or go back before then. What was it called before then?
Wales.
No, it wasn't called Wales.
Well, no, it wasn't called Wales. It was called, in fact, Wales was called Prydean, I believe then. But Wales, actually, but this is the point I was going to make. These isles, the original inhabitants of these isles, were actually Welsh, and the country Wales covered virtually all of what we now.
You know what about Cadwalla and all that people? I've seen that story.
Yeah.
I'm not convinced about that.
Oh, right. Okay. Well, what from the map that I've seen, I seen a map, and it showed that it covered all of what we now call present-day England, apart from a sliver.
I've seen the map. Yes, I've seen the map. Yes.
A sliver down the east side of England, and a little sliver down the on the south coast.
It's grasping at straws, Jeff. It's grasping
Maybe.
you are before you were conquered by anybody. That's what people tend to do in the UK. Well, we can't be Anglo-Saxons because they came from the continent. They were Germanic, they were Danish, they were Jutish, and they were Frisians, which is Dutch. So they've got to go back beyond that. And they can't. They've got to go back. They've got to be out beyond Roman. So they feel comfort that they are. We finally get to who we really were. But who were you before the Celts? The Celts spread out across the whole of Europe. Celts was a massive area. It wasn't just the UK, or what people call the UK today. So, you know, are we part of the continent? You know, are we continentals? Really?
Well, we're not connected to mainland Europe, are we? But I think probably at one time, I think the levels of the sea levels were different. And I know that there was a big piece of land to the east of the UK that was actually in the sea and eventually became sort of drowned in the sea, and that was called Doggerland. And the
Dogger Bank, yes, the Dogger Bank, yeah.
Yeah, so the land levels and things like that were very different then. So the actual cartography, the maps would have been very different in those days, going back thousands of years ago. And of course, these things change continuously. The topographic and cartographic, the maps of the world change over time. But, and then, of course, you get your wars, and with wars come another changing of the maps. And they change the borders, these artificial construct borders of the who owns what piece of land and all this sort of stuff. So it all changes over time, continuously. We've certainly got a long history, though, Stav. Regardless of which line of thought you've got on it, we've got a very long line of history. I would say, from what I've studied, I would say that we've got about 15% of our population are descended from the Vikings. A large percentage of us are descended from the Welsh and the French and the Germans, but very little influence actually from the Romans in our ancestry.
Because they were an occupation. That's all.
Yeah, they were they were there basically for trade.
Most of the people that were here, what they called Roman garrison, and that were other Celts that had been captured from the Germanic plains to France, Franks, and all the rest of it. They were mercenaries. They weren't actually Roman centurions. That's the
Right.
crazy thing about it. They, you know, Boudicca or Boudica, whatever, went into London and sacked it and burnt and killed all these Romans. Well, she killed a load of mercenaries, European mercenaries, a lot of Celtic people. That's,
Yeah.
that's the truth. One or two procurators, or whatever they were called, I don't know what they're called, people who run the local administration, Roman, lower class plebiscite Roman guy. But that's about it. That's about it. Because they never came here. They didn't want to conquer us. They wanted the resources. They wanted the resources. That's all. Just like modern bloody society, and these this world, which is about taking resources, isn't it? So they were no different. So
You had a strange word there. You said plebiscite. Isn't that Isn't that a referendum?
well, the plebiscite type society was about during the Roman times.
What, referendums and all that?
Yeah.
Ah.
You had a two-tier system type thing within the Roman society, No, don't forget you had a Congress and a Senate. You had a Senate. It was like a republic. It's a republic.
Yeah, I'll tell you something funny. I seen a thing a little while ago, and it said about a Congress. In America, they've got the Congress. Well, apparently, Congress is.
Well, they had a Congress. They had a Senate anyway. They had a Senate.
Yeah. Well, apparently, Congress is the name for the collective term for a bunch of baboons. Is that appropriate or what? I don't know.
But I guess really coming back to the crux of the whole thing about society kills. Well, what else kills? We know that the word democide, which is, I don't know where it comes from. I haven't heard of it recently, the last 5 or 6 years, which means death by government, is the biggest killer of humanity. Yes.
Yeah.
You can go and Google that if you like for a bit of fun.
If you look back through history, I think there's an awful lot of truth in that. I mean, apparently, due to Adolf Hitler, we lost something like 20 million people during the Second World War, and then you had Stalin, about 60 million people under Stalin, and about the same or slightly more under Mao Zedong. And I think the biggest, one of the biggest things that involved deaths was under the Islamic Crusades, which amounted to hundreds of millions. Apparently, that was one of the biggest things that killed off a lot of humanity.
Well, don't forget that was going for 1,400 years, nearly.
Yeah, oh, yeah. But I mean, so you're talking.
A lot of people don't. The Islamic conquest is probably the longest conquest that's ever been.
And it's still sort of going on today.
Yeah, well, they conquered actually more land and countries than the Roman Empire did. But nobody much. I mean, you get a few YouTube videos and a few books here and there, but not a great deal. It's very much hush hush for some strange reason. And, you go and look at it and it's there.
I suppose it's hush hush because of the old taboo that you mustn't talk about religion. Tut, 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 naughty boy, slap wristy. You're not allowed to talk about religion. You're not allowed to talk about politics. You're not allowed to talk about money. You've got these funny old ways in English society that there's certain things you should never talk about. You should never ask a lady her age because it's not polite to do so.
And I wish they'd tell the story about the Crusades, which was just the ending of the Reconquista.
Yeah.
I wish they'd get that right, at least.
I think we need to ditch all these taboos. You're not allowed to talk about religion. You're not allowed to talk about politics. You're not allowed to talk about, you should never ask a lady her age and things. We got all these weird, wonderful, sort of strange traditions in society, but they sort of, in a way, hold us back. They sort of stop us from openly expressing views about things.
Well, the thing is, Jeff, they won't do any of that. They won't tell you before the crusade, the conquest of even the Vatican Church. Even the Vatican Church conquest of, the Holy Roman Empire and the Reconquista. You had the Islamic conquest first.
Right. And that goes back.
The Islamic conquest was first.
from about 600 BC, 600 AD, wasn't it, or something?
Well, when the man Muhammad came onto the scene.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
you know, that came first.
And of
But
course,
it's not a reason. It's not a reason for all these wars and violences and everything. What I'm saying is, they don't want to get they like most people today. They want to go back to a certain period only. One is World War II and Adolf Hitler. It seems to stop. People's research seems to stop there for some reason. Well, that's the reason why the world is like it is today, because of Adolf Hitler, and he wasn't that bad really, and we had the Bolsheviks, and they don't want to go. There's shitloads before that.
I think we can also clear up on one little point, which I think is pertinent, Stav, and that is that, you know, people say, well, you shouldn't really talk about religion, blah, 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 and Islam is a religion. Well, actually, technically, no, it's not a religion. It's a sort of a way of life. That
it was an empire, for crying out loud.
Well, yes, it's an empire, but also it's not just religion. It's religious, it's political, it's militarian. So you've got all different aspects to that, which of course adds up to more than just a religion, much more than just a religion. So I think we should be able to talk about it, and you know, I think it's important that people do talk about it, because it's not like you know, Hinduism or whatever. It's more political. It's very, very political, and of course,
it's a whole complete empire in its own. What it is, it's military, religious. Apparently, he wasn't that good at the religious side, Muhammad. Yeah. I've read, and that's from Arabic scholars too, that I've read a little bit about. It's on both sides of the scholars. Military and political, yes. Of course. What is a government?
Political.
What is a government?
Political.
And is it military? Is it militarized? Does it have a force?
Yeah, it controls.
Oh, and does it have a religion?
It controls a force, and you could argue, Staff, that we've got a prime minister in the UK, as you know, and so if you look at that, the word minister says a lot, because that shows that at least there is some connection between religion and our political system from somewhere along the past, somewhere along in the past.
Of course, this country, the parliament, all of this stuff where people say, well, I wish there'd be really nice government. Why don't they look after us? Why do they treat us like this? Well, who created it?
Indeed.
Who created it? Why do people think they have a duty of care?
Yep. Well, this is Tony Benn said something which I thought was very telling. He said, I don't think people realise, I'm paraphrasing here because I don't know the exact words, something along the lines of this. He said, I don't think people realise how the establishment became established. He said, they simply stole the land and property off the poor, issued themselves with titles, and have been wielding power ever since, or something along those lines, which I think, you know, and that's for, Labour.
Right. Technically, historically, he's right, yes.
Yeah, and he was a Labour MP, I believe, wasn't he, Tony Benn?
Yes, he was. Well, he obviously done a lot of reading, and he done his history too. So, you know, it's somebody was saying, well, you know, the victorious always writes the history. Well, how about just reading it anyway? In actual fact, you'll find that there's a lot of truths in there, because they know full well average Joe ain't going to research. The average Joe ain't got time to research his own history. He doesn't know, because he hasn't got the time or the inclination, perhaps, or he's not interested.
I think your average Joe Stav is concerned about putting the bread and butter on the table, so they're rushing around like headless chickens, you know, fulfilling their employment obligations just to pay the bills. So, you know.
I've got a question.
Yes.
Go for it, Joe, sir.
Right, you've heard the saying with the own worst enemy, yeah?
Yeah.
Right, so let's take the Brexit deal, or the Brexit vote. Was it morally or was it intellectually right for the voter, whether you're pro or against it, to vote at all, knowing you didn't know any content of the deal?
So you're saying that people were not aware of the terms of the deal before they took the vote, yeah? And that we shouldn't have really had the referendum, maybe? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, exactly.
Right. Yes, I agree with you, Jouster. I think there is some mileage in how the propaganda was put out on both sides about the referendum. But what people should have voted on was their inner feeling, their inside feeling, not anything to do with deals with people to get money or corporations or kings, queens, parliaments, governments, and whatever else is in this society that does kill. They should have gone on their gut feeling or their feeling of the heart, whatever it is, their inner feeling, which is what is right.
But
they did do.
They did believe that they were right because
because they had to. All they got given was, do you want to stay in or leave? Now we honestly answered that question the way Andy's just put it. As for saying something else, then it's diabolically wrong to ask them to try and lever that out of them again. It should carry through. This is Parliament, how they do it and always do it.
This is the sneakiness and the way that this governments have been for many, many decades and centuries. They play trickery on you. Let me finish, Bill. Right? They get people to go against themselves. They're so trickery and slippery. They even get you to go against your own inner feeling, which makes you feel ill at the end of the day. Because if you take the shilling,
it's openly been admitted on this newspaper site called. I'm not going to click up it, Mouse, because I don't want to all the consent. It's called the Spectator. Europeans, the EU answer to Brexit and Ireland when they said they divide and rule. That's what they do, and that's all they've done.
Yes, that's the old truth.
Interesting little quandary here, folks.
Yep, that's the communist way.
I've got an interesting little quandary, actually. I seen somebody post something the other day about, we voted to leave the European Union. We didn't vote for Brexit as such. We voted for the European Union. So what is Brexit? Well, Brexit is a contraction of the two words Britain and exit. Well, what countries compose Britain? As far as I'm aware, Britain is composed of Wales, England, and Scotland. Northern Ireland is not part of Britain, but Northern Ireland is part of the UK. So maybe what they should have called the deal was UKexit rather than Brexit. So it would be UK exit, UKexit. Now,
this is the trickery, Jeff, and there's a bit of an oversight. It's not really worth bothering about bringing that up, but it's quite important what you said. Quite important.
The whole thing going on about the Irish backstop.
Yes, I'm just saying it hinges on this border business. No border, hard border, soft border. Yeah. It actually hinges all on that now.
Exactly. So I'm thinking, by calling it Brexit, are we now saying that maybe that's their way of saying, well, let's just be Britain again and toss Northern Ireland to one side and let them, carry on with Ireland, Southern Ireland, and we'll just break up the union. Maybe that's part of what it's intended to do.
Well, Southern Ireland is already the EU, isn't it?
Yes.
Well, we shouldn't have been allowed to let them join the EU, Southern Ireland.
No, it's not. It's not part of our jurisdiction, Bill. It's not.
Ireland is an island. Northern Ireland's got some ties to Southern Ireland. Surely it's an island.
well, is attached to it, but the
Yeah,
actual
but it's not ruled. It's not ruled by the Queen, the government. It's not.
technically
It's,
Ireland is
remember, it used to be. Yeah. There was actually a royal mint in Dublin.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're only trading with us, Northern Ireland. That's all it's always been. But they had a say as to stopping Southern Ireland as a united island of going into EU. But they gave them referendum after referendum and chokes them with money.
Yes, but
And
that's
we sat back and let them do it.
Bill, that's nothing to do with us. Southern Ireland is its own sovereign.
No, we could have. Yeah, but Northern Ireland let them do it, didn't they?
But
They didn't have a referendum with the North of Ireland.
Do you think that the Ulstermen of Northern Ireland want a united Ireland?
Well, it used to be United Ireland. It's an island, Andy.
I'm asking you a question. Do you think they want a united Ireland, or do they want to be still part of the UK? You think?
Well, hang on a minute. We're United Scotland and what have you. They're still tied to us, but they have to jump to our tune.
Under force.
Under force.
And under force or not, they're joined to us. They're not another island, are they? Scotland's not another island. They're part of us, and so is Wales. Yeah.
Well, actually, the union was trickery by one man called Sir William Paterson, who was the co-founder of the Bank of England. He deliberately bankrupted Scotland into the union. That's the history. That's the history. Scotland had never had a referendum to join the union.
Europe should never have got their hands on Southern Ireland.
But
and
you're talking about the Republic of Ireland, which is its own sovereign country.
Exactly, it is, yeah.
Yeah, but it used to be United Ireland.
But it's not.
I know, but it used to be.
That's like turning around and saying.
Italy used to own
its own king.
Yeah,
and its own king.
You could say that Italy used to own Great Britain.
No, it's not. It's not tied to. They're offshore. Ireland is Ireland. Southern Ireland, Northern Ireland. We're just trading with Northern Ireland.
Listen, guys.
That's what we're doing. Trading.
I know what you're saying, Bill. In principle, I know what you're saying. Yes,
Why on earth did Northern Ireland let Southern Ireland get taken away by Europe by stuffing them full of bloody money?
It's to do with religion. A lot of it, sectarianism.
Well, Catholics. It's only Catholics and Protestants, isn't it?
Only.
Hang on a sec, guys. Hang on a sec. I can tell you're all getting a bit passionate about this subject, and I've got a bit.
No, I'm not religious. You know, I can take it or leave it. I mean, I'm not. I just can't understand.
A lot of Irish people are, Bill, and you know it means life and death. You know, sectarianism. Go and check the history, man. It's it's not.
I know we've got.
Europe didn't care a damn, did they? What was the religion they were?
Hang on.
This is money.
Yes, we get what you're saying, Bill. And in principle, yeah, well, people should stick together and help each other, but they don't. They just want to screw each other. But anyway, never mind. Jeff, what was you going to say?
Okay, well, what I was going to say, guys, actually, it's quite interesting, you know.
I'm not trying to make a point or anything. I just can't understand how on earth Southern Ireland got pulled into Europe. We were actually doing the same thing.
You have to understand the history of Ireland, Bill, and you'll have to go back 500-600 years of history.
Well, they still don't explain the fact how bloody well an offshore entity can rule in their part of their island, which is a united island. It's one island, and it's not split with a river between the two of them.
Right, hang on a sec. Listen. I'm not absolutely certain about the history of Ireland that well myself, but I think you've got Catholics.
You had a king.
I think what you had was Catholics in the Republic of Ireland and Protestants in the northern part of Ireland. They didn't get on too well, and they ended with a thing.
There's a bit more savagery than the UK was. We'd moved forward. They were still like peasants and.
They brought about the thing called the Good Friday Agreement, and of course Northern Ireland is a part of the United Kingdom, whereas the Republic of Ireland was completely sovereign, of course, until it went into the European Union. So it's
Yeah,
not.
but hang on a minute. If we hadn't played about with them and Tony Blair and the Good Friday Agreement, all that crap, and said, well, look, goodbye, Northern Ireland, you go and unite with your own thing, we wouldn't have this trouble that we're getting out of Europe.
Well, maybe so. But anyway, I've got another question.
Well, absolutely.
I want to detract from that now because I want to ask another question here, which I'm going to put to the panel. And
It's a good little go, though.
Yes, interesting stuff, guys. Listen, now we know that a lot of us here are sort of pro Brexit or pro UKexit or pro Leave, whatever you want to call it, because we don't like the European Union. But it's not the United Kingdom a form of union after all? Because we've united Scotland and Wales and England. Maybe it would be better, possibly, to just split up into the different countries that we were. So you have just England as England, Scotland as Scotland, Wales as Wales, and of course Ireland and Northern Ireland as two separate entities, and they can just go off and do what they want and just get rid of the kingdom anyway, because the kingdom.
Hush your mouth, Jeff. Hush your mouth.
Hang on a sec. We're basing our kingdom on the fact that we've got a monarch, which we don't really have because he's no longer got a royal prerogative. So maybe we should just be lots of little individual nations happily trading with each other, respecting each other's sovereignty, which is what we want for our own country, out of the European Union, our own little sovereign country.
Well, you best go and have a chat with Jacob Rees-Mogg then.
Why is that what Jacob Rees-Mogg wants? A breakup of the union?
No. What you're saying is dead against what he thinks and thinks. Yeah.
Oh, he'd like to keep the United Kingdom together. Yeah.
Well, if you want to lock bloody Northern Ireland, we ain't got you. We've got just England and Scotland, one island. End of.
Hang on a sec.
And you want to split it up into 3 sections? You do.
Yep. Now let's look at what these actual sections are called, because we're British. We call ourselves British. Well, British.
No, I'm English.
Okay. Well, if you're English, you just belong to England. Now, British means Britain, which is England, Scotland, and Wales. It doesn't include Northern Ireland, but the United Kingdom includes the same countries I've just mentioned plus Northern Ireland. Yeah. So what does it all mean? It's all a political union.
Well, it's a form of breaking it up. We don't want it to be broken up, do you? Really, Jeff? Do you?
Well, I
want every section to be sold off to Europe, and by stealth they'll take the whole country over.
Okay, well let's put it like this.
Or is that what it's planned to be?
If you ask,
it's balkanised anyway, Bill.
If you ask,
it's going to be balkanised anyway.
If you listen, if you ask the average,
balkanised by the bloody tunnel.
Well, the way people are going with the division, it will have to be that way, won't it?
Well, then let's stop arguing, completely stay in, carry on happily going on, and just take the punishment and tell our children to.
Well, then you haven't even got a United Kingdom.
Well, then, if that's the way it's going to go, then what you've got to give up the fight.
You would rather join up to the EU, right, and give the whole lot away, rather than lose Scotland and Northern Ireland.
I don't want to join the bloody Europe.
Well, then this.
I'm just saying, you just give up the fight.
No, it will be balkanised.
Well, that's what you're saying. Well, then you should roll over then, shouldn't you? I'm not rolling over.
What do you mean rolling over? What allegiance to the Scots?
We've been balkanised. What are you going to be? You're going to be the patch on the outside and not the patch on the inside and not on the outside.
Listen. Have you been go to France and see all the different regions in France?
I can go fuck about France.
Well, go to. Well, listen, isn't it funny? Within England, how many different slangs have we got and dialects? It's one of the most diverse dialect-speaking countries in the world, England.
Right, can I just, for our viewers, can I just define a certain word here? Because a lot of people might not know what balkanise is. And in fact,
it's a pack. It's rubberised. It's like repairing something with rubber.
What did they do? What did they do with Yugoslavia?
I've just looked up the word balkanize, and the definition here is defined as the following, which is divide a region or body into smaller, mutually hostile states or groups. Now, I don't want us to be hostile against other little countries or whatever.
That'll happen.
It says balkanization or balkanization is a geopolitical term for the process of fragmentation or division of a region or state into smaller regions or states that are often hostile or uncooperative with one another. Well, it doesn't necessarily mean to say they are hostile or uncooperative with one another, but it's certainly a breakup of certain unions and taking things back to little national sovereignties, if you like, maybe. Is that how you would define it, Stav?
Yes, well, look, you want to look at a classic balkanization from an area to serve an agenda. Look at the former Yugoslavia. Look what happened. Why did that happen? Well, it was deliberately done.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and that's what will happen here, because people look, you go to somebody who disagrees 100% with you about Brexit. What are you going to do? Throttle them into changing their mind?
No, they go along with the majority of what we are in a democracy.
Just like the Brexit vote, Yeah,
well, the Parliament's at fault here. The people's done the right thing, and they're not being catered for. That's what I'm saying. You just waste your time. You just roll over. That's what the youngsters will do. So it's beyond waste our time yapping on about it.
It's beyond the old pirate parliament.
Well,
that's what parley means. Parliament. It's mind control of the parley.
From my point of view, from where I'm standing, I look at things like, well, the United Kingdom is a sort of a political union, very much in the same way that the European Union is a political union. And it wouldn't bother me in the least if Scotland decided, well, like I'm Scottish, I want my country to make its own laws. I want my country to have the ability to be self-governing sovereign nation. And the same with Wales and any other countries. And so I've got no problem with it at all. I don't want to be hostile towards them or for them to be hostile towards us. I want us to be able to trade freely as independent sovereign nations. And I think that it's not necessarily...
You're talking about England, Scotland and Wales, which were only three, if you want to say three little countries together all in one part of the land. Well, we're a bit civilised compared to EU, communist run. 27 countries are baying to a magistrate, right? With no say. If they all voted on something, if not, was it 16 or 17 countries? If they got the power of sway, it's like having a referendum, I suppose. They have to go along with it, the whole 27.
Well, this is the bit I don't understand. Okay, well, I'm going to sort of put this
the same as how we do it in our democracy when we have a bloody well, what's the name?
But this is the bit I don't understand.
5 years.
Can I just clarify where I'm
election?
Yeah, but this is the bit I don't understand, because if we're a unified kingdom under Her Majesty the Queen, and we've got Northern Ireland, Scotland, Wales and England, why have they all got their own parliaments? Because you've got a Welsh parliament, you've got a Scottish parliament, and presumably you've got a Northern Ireland parliament as well. So why haven't we just got the one parliament in London if we're all unified?
Well, we're in a democracy. We're under a democracy, aren't we? We're all sort of saying, well, you sort your own things out, and we'll budget you from Westminster accordingly. How it should be. But they don't do that in Europe. Oh no.
Well, you do realise that the English Parliament has no authority over taxation in Scotland, don't you?
Ah, okay, that's interesting.
That's your democracy bill.
Well, it's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing, is it?
And by the way, they have no tuition fees for their universities. It's all for free. And by the way, you don't have to sell your bungalow and live your last 6 months in a home, and they take it all back off of you.
And also,
Well, that's what Europe's going to do, yeah.
apparently in Wales,
Some democracy, but
in Wales you don't have to pay for prescription charges. They're free in Wales, whereas in England you pay for them.
and Scotland, by the way.
Ah, right, there you go. So there's all these little differences, but yet there's also something that they have in common because they're all unified under this kingdom, so to speak, which is all very strange. I don't quite understand it. I don't think I've ever understood it. I don't think I ever will understand it.
It's all to do with commerce, Jeff, and that's why the union was put together, and it was deceived. It was conspired in trickery and bankruptcy of all countries for the Bank of England to move in. That's democracy. Yeah, Bank of England is democracy. Actually, who owns the Bank of England?
City of London Corporation.
Well, have you got the contract? Can I see it?
I don't know. I'm just guessing.
Well, there you go. So this whole country, right? You have to decide on where you sit in it. If you voted in the referendum, you voted because you felt like you had to vote, and you voted on your inner feelings, not because of deals with Brussels and the threat of economies crashing. You've done it because inside you made a decision. There was no propaganda needed. There was no bits of paper that cost millions of pounds of finance to give to people. I never saw any of that, by the way. I don't even think they printed anything, but they put it on the budget. So, people voted. And the basic concept of that is people feel let down because it is a capitalistic society we live in. Unfortunately, people have this social idealism where the two can't work, never will work. It's a conundrum they can't solve, but they don't see it. But, at the end of the day, people voted and the result was done, whether it's hooked, cooked, or whatever. If they don't deliver on that, leave means leave. Then I can only say this country.
I would give them another referendum.
No, I can't see.
And you'll find that the more people will want to vote to leave.
Well,
youngsters are coming out in their thousands.
Well, that's probably a reason why you won't get that referendum.
Well, no, that's right.
Well, the High Court at the moment may be ruling that we do have a second referendum because of the Atman Banks criminal affair. They may rule on that issue.
But of course, they won't probably cancel that out with the millions donated for the Remain side through Cameron himself.
Well, this is interesting stuff. I'm going to make myself a quick drink, so you guys carry on.
Anyway, at the end of the day, if they don't deliver that bill, this country's finished.
Well, yeah, of course it is. Sovereignty gone democracy.
Yeah, but no, I just don't mean in some wanker in a suit saying you've got to do this, otherwise I'll put a gun to your head. Bollocks. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the culture and what you just scrub the name. Get rid of England. Get rid of the UK. Get rid of everything. Get rid of the lot. Get rid of everything. Every trace.
Let the brownies in.
That's
Let the brainers in, give them and help them on their way. They've taken our hometown out.
Let's have the cards on the table. Let's finally have the cards on the table.
Should have had the cards on the table before the vote was taken.
Well, yeah, I know, but at the end of the day, Jouster, if they want this EU to be the rulers of this country, then let's have the cards on the table. Let's call it EU zone such and such. That Englishness doesn't exist anymore. Britishness doesn't exist anymore. UK doesn't exist anymore. You've got no rights. You live in a Napoleonic law society run by the Brussels. Let's have the cards on the table. Let's call a spade a spade. Let's get it out there and put it down on the table and not have none of this nonsense. Let's get rid of this crap, this nonsense. And if
let's build a gallows and hang them.
Yeah, whichever you want to do. I think they should the word honour the people's vote at the end of the day. If they don't do it, I'm finished with the whole shebang, me, personally, all of everything. That's it. I'll just retire into my reading books and keeping my feet warm as best I can.
Well, if you had a little village or something like that with 70 people around it and you wanted to do something, because it was quite tiny, or a little, like Hamish or whatever, they have a head count, right? Because they might stumble against something they want to do, and they say, no, I don't want to do it. I want to do it. I want to do it. You don't do it. You don't do it. You would have an add up, and the majority will waver, and the minority will have to go along with it, which is a democratic way of doing it. How else can one do it?
You have, if you're going to have democracy from their own mouths, is the best, they say, of a bad bunch. That's what they say.
So you people
That's what they say.
Want to be under a European state where other people tell other people have no rights on the say of what a body of people, magistration type, say they're going to do. No notice of anything other behind their backs. Look at Spain. Look what happens in Spain.
Well, Spain ain't no great deal, but listen. Look,
yeah, but the hard-faced French just ignored them and said, yes, we've done it, and we don't know
at the end of the day,
refugees at all.
Up to the referendum, I've seen figures spouted about 80%, 75%, 97%. We're already part of the EU. We're already controlled by Brussels.
Well,
repeal the 72 Act and we're not.
Oh yes, I know, Marty. But the facts with financial deals and trade deals, it's a single European trade business, and single European market. You've got open borders. You've got all of this stuff that's already in place, and it's been like that for quite some time.
Yeah, but we could ignore it. We can withdraw our consent. We can't be governed. Us individual sovereign people cannot be governed by any other offshore state or any other country. That's Alfred the Great's law.
Yes, but I've just said, Bill. I've
all you want to do is stand up against the people who stand up against you in your own country, like your parliament, and stick it up to them.
You sold it. You sold it for cheap cars and houses. You sold it.
No.
You did.
No, he didn't go.
You got your Maggie Thatcher mortgage.
Oh, dear. I'm back, folks. And I can see passions are rising fiercely here on Axiom Flux tonight.
Mutiny on the bounty.
I love you guys for your passion and your input. I think you're all great. And I think you've got a lot of valid and interesting points to bring up on these topics. And I can tell you're fiercely passionate about the old Brexit situation.
Jouster.
We're going to have to wrap up soon, so
let's have a little democracy inside this little forum. Jouster, do you drive a car?
Yes.
Right, so you got a driver's license.
Yeah.
Right, and you got a car and it's taxed and insured and all the rest of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you get pulled up for speeding, and your car can't do over 25 miles an hour. But you're pulled up in a 30, saying doing 35. What are you going to do about it? Pay the fine, or are you going to go to court?
Well, they do say you should have.
Hypothetical question, but it could happen.
How much is the fine?
The fixed penalty fine. That's all it is. Fixed penalty. It's not a fine. It's not a criminal case. What will you do? What are you going to do? Pay it?
Just a fine, is it?
It's a fixed penalty.
Right. So
fine.
It's
not a
points.
Yeah. Well, no, you can take the points on your license, but it's the monetary side of it. Are you going to pay that? Are you going to object it, or just going to pay it and say my car can't do 30 miles an hour? But am I going to challenge it?
I'm going to challenge it. Yeah.
Right. So you're set to go to court and you're waiting to be summoned because you refuse to pay it, or you're going to write to the police.
I'll notify them. I'll notify them that I'm going to challenge it. Yeah. Well, you can go. You can go to an appeal. You appeal it before you get to court anyway.
Yeah, but you're badgered into paying more in.
Well,
front
yeah. You
if
go.
you are committed the offence in court.
You don't go to court first anyway.
No.
You take it to an appeal. They'll examine it. Then that's where the arguments start coming in. Now, if it doesn't get past the appeal, if they don't listen to your case and you've got tantamount proof that, like, through camera calibration, and then you can have your car mechanically certified to say that it doesn't go that speed, well then you're going to court.
Well, they're not going to pay for having all that done. You've got to pay for it.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, you have to do it. Yeah.
Yeah, but people are badgered into. The majority of people just like, I can't be bothered. No, I must have been doing it, and they know what they're doing. It's illegal, even to submit a fixed penalty fine for something that is not lawful.
Well, it comes under.
That's why 90% of people who challenge it, appeal it, get off with it.
If you go into court, right, and you produce the Declaration of Rights or the English Bill of Rights saying that no final forfeiture is
before representation.
But yeah, before being conviction, then all they do is they will say you are frivolous, vexatious argument. You just don't want to pay.
Well, you put some cotton wool in your ears, don't you? You don't get goaded.
And they say, if you do not pay this and you carry on with your dribble about a constitution that doesn't exist, only uncodified, which doesn't exist, I'm going to do you for contempt of court and I can put you in prison for 6 months. Imagine.
Would that be criminal contempt or civil contempt?
It's not civil, it's not criminal, it's not none of them.
I was asking the judge.
It would be civil.
Oh, sorry.
Judge Stav, would that be criminal or civil contempt?
It
certainly not criminal.
Be once you'd issued the warning.
I'm just asking on behalf of my client Jouster. Would that be civil contempt or criminal contempt?
It would be civil contempt, but it could result in.
Well, Jouster doesn't have a contract to perform before this court, so how can it be civil contempt?
I would say, has he got a driving license?
But he doesn't have a contract to perform before the court as a solicitor, so it can't be civil. It can't be civil contempt. With respect, Your Honour, it must then be criminal contempt, mustn't it?
I know, but they would still slam you down with a frivolous.
Well, the judge said to me that then it was criminal contempt, and the next thing I asked him, I says, "Well, who's the injured party?"
Yes, I know that.
And he said the court was the injured party, and I said, "How could the court be injured? It's a legal fiction."
Yes, I know that, Marty. I studied the Freeman. I got into.
Well, it does. That part of it works, mate.
I know, but
they have to state which contempt they're going to hold you in.
I know.
Civil
this
or criminal.
Yeah, but what I'm saying to Bill, Marty, is like Justice says to me. It's a devil's advocate type response. I know what you're talking about. I know about contracts. I know about civil. I know about criminal. I know about common law. I know about statutes. I know about legislators and legislation. I know how it works. I understand what you're saying. But when
it works for them. It works for them and against us.
Exactly. Exactly.
Anyway, I'll meet back out.
We know what you're up against. We know what we're up against. But like Bill was saying to Jouster, what are you going to do about it? Or you could actually get it thrown out on appeal. Yeah, you could actually, if you could find some incorrect procedure during the hearing, then you could actually win the appeal.
Well, I'd advise everybody to challenge everything, because in the last 8 years they shut down 150 of the small magistrates' court that these sort of cases would go to. So the more people, because obviously people weren't challenging the system, they were just paying the fine, like you said.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
So if people did go back to challenging the system, then courts like Grantham Magistrates Court that accidentally just happened to shut down about a year after I started visiting it.
Marty, ours down the road shut down.
Yeah, well, so did Sandbach Court, so did Rochdale, so did well, there's loads of them that shut down. Not Rochdale, across the water from Liverpool.
Now here we go. Here we go. What happens?
But they shut them all down.
Yeah. What happens if they take you to a tribunal?
A kangaroo court?
No, a tribunal. Now, we're no longer in a magistrate's court, we're in a tribunal court.
Well, then we're proper fucked, eh?
Yes. And that's what they're doing. Local court, like you're saying, I agree with you 100%, Marty. The local one here was shut down. It was magistrates and tribunal courts, but they closed it down anyway. So they moved it down the coast, and it's tribunal courts. Everything got put through tribunal courts now, and they're not judges; they're just professional people with their own opinion.
Well, there is a fun. There is a funny tail on to the fact that they shut down Grantham Magistrates Court, and the funny part of that story is that. The electric and the gas company that send out warrants saying that they've got a warrant and stuff say that they've got warrants from Grantham Crown Court, and they're still doing it 3 years after Grantham Magistrates shut down, which is great because you just ring them up and say, well, you're obviously clearly in fraud because that court shut down. Yeah. Oh, bye. Anyway, carry on. I'll mute out again.
No, but I know what you're saying. Thanks for the input, Marty.
But listen, guys. This has been a great conversation tonight. Another fantastic show on Axiom. But I'm afraid we're going to have to wrap up for this evening. I want to thank all our guests for coming in here tonight. We've got PJ, Jouster, Billy Boy, and Marty. And we've got Judge Stav in the house tonight.
No, I ain't no bloody judge. I'm no beak.
Yes, Your Honour.
I'm no bloody beak.
Yes, Your Honour. Your Honour, 3 bags.
Get on your motorbike, Judge.
I ain't got no crow feathers on and a beak.
Anyway, guys, listen. You want to let's have final thoughts then. So we'll start with a brief minute of final thoughts from Marty. If you've got anything you'd like to say, 1 minute, briefly.
Oh, I'd like to go on that Judge Peak one that, and it's even less than a minute. Judge Peak, the guy that claimed to be a judge at Birkenhead that was arrested by some 600 peaceful demonstrators, never worked again as a judge after we arrested him in the court.
Yes, Peak the beak.
He never worked again. Anyway, that's my 10 pennies for the last minute.
Thank you very much, Marty. And that's the Peak the Beak Birkenhead, I believe you're talking about there, yeah?
Yeah, Judge Peak. You know when there was 600 people that turned up, took black umbrellas to Birkenhead.
I remember.
Peaky Blinder, wasn't it? Peaky Blinder.
I remember it well. In fact,
well, he played a blinder when he escaped out the back door with his two unmarked protection cars, one in front, one behind him. That's another story.
Back door, shuffled out the back door, so to speak. Thank you for that, Marty. Right, so final thoughts from Billy Boy. Have you got anything to say, Billy Boy? Final thoughts, 1 minute.
I'm stuck for words, mate. Stuck for words.
That's okay. That's no problem. All right then. So Billy Boy's he's happy.
I've enjoyed the evening, anyways.
Yeah, as long as you've enjoyed that's half the battle, mate. Enjoy the journey, the Axiom Flux journey. We will try our best to enjoy that. Final thoughts from Jouster. Anything you'd like to say, Jouster?
No, I've got nothing to say, sorry.
Nothing to say, not guilty. Okie dokie. Not going to plead.
No case to answer.
No case to answer, okay, from Jouster.
Charge him with assault and battery and put him in a dry cell.
PJ, any final thoughts from you, sir?
Yeah, I have actually. A quick one. Can we reach a day where we're able to offer services that doesn't result in the death of its customers? That'd be a nice start.
If
it comes to the form of society, no.
Well, that's the next question. Can that be implemented into a society?
That would
I jumped ahead.
Well, we're back on the subject. We've gone full circle. And we've gone back onto the subject of society kills here. So, but yes, you're quite right, PJ. I think I'd agree with that assertion. So anyway, so there's PJ, and finally, final thoughts from Judge Judy. I mean Judge Stav. I mean Stav. Sorry.
Judge Dredd.
I'm no judge. I just have my thoughts. And my thoughts are my own. As in the words of Private Schultz from Hogan's Hero, I know nothing.
I think we all know nothing ultimately, but we think a lot. We have a lot of opinions ultimately, and things that you know are few and far between. And if you were to challenge the difference between beliefs and facts, I think there's a massive gap between the two. So
I just want I tell you what, I just want my hide of land back. That's what I want my hide of land back. That's what I want.
I think that's a good final thought, and I think that's maybe another topic for another week on what we do to get our own individual sovereignty back rather than sovereignty of the nation. Because as an individual sovereign, you should be entitled to land. You should be entitled to your hide of land and your ability to be self-sustaining and able to produce your own home to live in and your own food and things like that. But that's a topic for another day, guys. Thank you for our viewers for joining.
I've got one last word, Jeff.
Okie dokie, go on then, Marty.
Brexit is the clue to build gallows.
Ah, yes, let's build the gallows outside Downing Street like the French are building the guillotine outside their parliament, and give them a friendly reminder that we're the public servants and we should be in charge, not the other way around.
Can't we have a giant meat grinder like we've got depicted in the image for tonight's show?
Why not?
A giant.
Why not? It cuts down on time drawing and quartering them. It cuts down on time putting them on the rack to work out where they're bidding all the dosh, all the money, because obviously we're gonna strip them clean, aren't we, before we string them up?
Oh yeah, that's it. I'd like to add on Marty's point. As this country's politicians and elitists are so keen on spreading other cultures from other parts of the world, let's bring in a nice little one that they used to use, and that was execution when you had to ride the Iron Maiden. I think that's the best one.
That's
nice.
That's very appropriate and poignant points you're all making tonight. So anyway, my final thought is that I think the ruling class is actually us, and we've given it away. So I think we've got to step up to the plate now as a people and say, hey, wait a minute, aren't we supposed to be the ruling class? And aren't they supposed to be the public servants? So, yes, I think we need to turn the tables and remind them who the actual boss is.
They're answerable to us, yeah.
Yes, we have the numbers on our side. Anyway, that's it for tonight.
We are the majority.
Indeed, we're the
silent majority.
And they're the minority. Anyway, that's it for Axiom Flux tonight on this fantastic episode, Season 5, Episode 3 of Axiom Flux. We'll be back in a week's time, next Sunday, hopefully, with another great topic for you guys. Until then, good night. God bless. It's good night from me, and it's good night from him, and him, and him, and him, and him, and him.
Good night, sir.
Good night.
Cheers, Jeff.
Nanu, Nostar.
Night, Jim Bob.
Narky Dim.